When talking about who's the greatest defender to ever set foot on the gridiron, the conversation always seems to come back to one man. Sure, some might mention the prime times, the Reggie Whites, and more recently Aaron Donald, but at the end of the day, 99% of NFL fans agree that Lawrence Taylor was the greatest defender ever. The crowning achievement of his career was his 1986 NFL MVP award. Many people believe that he was the only defensive player ever to earn this honor. But what if I told you there was another defender who is just as feared as Lawrence Taylor, who rivals him in terms of on-field production, and who won the very same MVP award as him a decade and a half earlier? This titan of the game is the only other man I believe is worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as LT, and he is forgotten by so many NFL fans. I'm speaking of the great Alan Page, who is by far the best defensive tackle to ever play the game, and might be the greatest defender ever. Alan Page was the leader of the legendary Purple People Eaters defenses of the 1970s. He was a 9-time Pro Bowler, made 6 All-Pro teams, and as mentioned previously, won the 1971 NFL MVP award. During his time in Minnesota, he led the Vikings to an NFL championship, 4 NFC championships, and made it to 4 Super Bowls. During an era which featured Mean Joe Green, Dick Butkus, and Jack Youngblood, he was the NFL's best defender. Sacks were not kept as an official stat until late in Alan Page's career, so it is unclear how many he truly had. The Pro Football Hall of Fame claims that Page produced an absurd 173 sacks and an additional 27 blocked kicks. This would make him 4th all-time in total sacks. But for the sake of fairness, I will use the slightly more conservative 148.5 sacks Pro Football Reference believes Page put up. This would make Page 8th all-time in total sacks, with 6.5 more than LT and with 11 more than the next closest defensive tackle. Page did this with ferocity and agility that was unrivaled at the time. While most interior defensive linemen would sit in their one gap and eat up space, Page decided that style of play was for suckers. He would move from gap to gap with agility rivaling that of blitzing safeties. And once he decided to move upfield, good luck stopping. Oftentimes it looked like Page was sacking the offensive lineman in front of him in addition to the quarterback. He possessed a hitherto unseen combination of speed, size, power, and agility. He was a matchup nightmare for offenses. Opposing quarterbacks never knew where he was coming from, but they knew he was coming. This ferocious playstyle led him to be unrivaled among his peers in terms of sacks in the defensive tackle position. But if you think his numbers are impressive from what I've told you, you don't know the half of it yet. What you've got to understand about Alan Page's numbers is that they were put up in a completely different era. In the current NFL, teams drop back to pass roughly 34 times a game. When LT won his MVP in 1986, opposing quarterbacks dropped back to pass roughly 32 times a game. When Page had his monstrous 18-sack season in 1976 and won league MVP in 1971, opposing quarterbacks only attempted 26 passes a game. Allen averaged a sack every 20.3 passing attempts in 1976. If Page averaged the same number of sacks per attempt in today's modern pass-happy NFL over the course of a 17-game season instead of the 14 he played, Alan Page will have recorded 29 sacks. That is otherworldly. Lawrence Taylor's 1986 season blows that out of the water. Aaron Donald's 2018 campaign puts that to shame. TJ Watt's record-setting 2021, not even close. While Page didn't win the MVP this year, I believe 1976 was the best year of his career. If quarterbacks passed as much back then as they do today, Alan Page would have shattered the single-season sack record as a defensive tackle. As for his MVP season, Page recorded a much more pedestrian 9 sacks, but watching the highlights from that year, you can see he was an absolute menace in the run game, bursting into the backfield seemingly every play and dragging running backs to the ground. He also recorded 2 safeties and blocked several kicks. If you perform the same exercise I did for Page's 1976 season for this year, he would have put up 14.5 sacks. Which for any other defensive tackle is an extraordinary year. But thanks to the lofty standards Alan Page set for himself, this was a down season statistically. Now I know what some of you are gonna say. There's no way Page would have put up these numbers in the modern NFL. Everyone's bigger, faster, and stronger. But Page was 6'4", 250, and insanely fast. You don't think he would have been able to add 30 or 40 pounds of muscle with the benefits of modern dieting, technology, and rest. And you don't think with modern speed and agility training, he would have been able to get a little bit faster. If you put Page in today's NFL, he looks like a 6'4" version of Aaron Donald. Practically unstoppable. The final part of Page's game I really want to talk about is his special teams work. While some defensive superstars may have phoned it in on special teams, Page was not one of them. He blocked an absurd 27 field goals over the course of his career, by far the most in NFL history. Guys like Lawrence Taylor may have scared opposing offenses, but Alan Page broke their will like no other. While pass rushers like Taylor came around the edge and hit quarterbacks without ever being seen, opposing QBs had to watch Alan Page burst through their line and come flying at them. And he might even be carrying an offensive guard to hit him with. Both in terms of total career production and impact on offenses, I believe Alan Page surpasses Lawrence Taylor. No defensive tackle, not even Aaron Donald, has been able to replicate the production Page had from an interior lineman spot. He was truly one of one. What might be most impressive about Alan Page, though, is that his post-football career rivals that of his Hall of Fame career. Page served on the Minnesota Supreme Court, was awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2018, and has done a great deal of good for African-American youth through various charitable organizations. He is an intelligent and kind old man, which is why it boggles my mind sometimes that this generous old judge was the NFL's boogeyman for well over a decade. He is the greatest defensive tackle ever. He's the greatest Minnesota Viking ever, and he may be the greatest defender ever. So next time you sit down with your buddies and talk about all-time great NFL defenders like Lawrence Taylor, Deion Sanders, and Ray Lewis, be sure to mention Alan Page, a true legend of the game who deserves your respect.